Welcome to the Early Education Podcast. This is Jessica. I am a CSUN student and a child development major. Today's topic of discussion is the role of early childhood educators. And I have some good hosts with me, and you guys could feel free to introduce yourselves.
Again, my name is Maria Vasquez. I'm also a CSUN student. My major is child development with an emphasis on early childhood development. Take it away, Vanessa.
Very nice. I'm Vanessa. I am a deaf studies major at CSUN. And that's pretty much me right now.
My name is Cynthia, and I'm also a student at CSUN, and my major is child development.
Hi, my name is Maria Castillo. I am a senior at CSUN, and I am a psychology major.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Gomez, and I'm a CSUN student as well, and my major is sociology. My occupation, I'm a legal assistant, and I'm a fun fact is that I'm a founding member of the sociology club at CSUN.
Oh, wow.
Nice. I never knew that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So today's topic of the role of early childhood educators, I think, is an important topic, and we are in great presence of people who I assume know what they're talking about.
I would hope so.
And I think this will be helpful for me because I'm starting a new job as a preschool teacher, and hopefully you guys could give me some tips about what my role would be and what I could do to make it like a good experience for myself and maybe even the children.
Yay, Jessica, I'm excited for that.
Her new job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your first day, Jessica?
It was good. So I'm supposed to be doing preschool teaching, but since I don't have any experience actual doing like circle time and creating like a curriculum, I'm going to be doing teacher aid first. And then maybe after like a certain period of time, when I do see what kind of kids that I work good with, they'll place me with them. So today was more of like shadowing a teacher and really seeing what they do on their like schedule. So we see like what time they eat, what kind of lessons they learn, and when they do like outside play and when they eat lunch. But it's really interesting too, because you see how it like goes in like coronavirus time with like all the kids wearing masks. But I think it was
Wow.
like really
The new
interesting.
norm.
The new norm, yeah. We had to be like, make sure your mask covers your nose.
Oh, that's like a constant thing all day.
Yeah.
And what kind of ages of the kids are you shadow or yeah?
Oh, for my classroom?
Yes.
So I have the older kids, so it'd be 5 to 6 years old.
That's a good age.
And the kids that are 6, they're just there because they do like Zoom school there, because they're supposed to be in first grade, but like they like being at the school, so they just do Zoom there.
Okay.
Do you have prior school setting experience, I guess? Like, have you worked in school before with children?
I've worked with older children, so it was like kids closer to my age. So it would be like kids like 14 to 17, so just high schoolers. But I have worked in like a daycare and a gym before, but it was not really structured. It was more of a babysitting type thing. So I just want to know like how I could be better at creating that structure, because if eventually I'm gonna have to do it without someone else helping me. So you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we can give you some tips. I mean, according to all of the things that we've been learning this semester.
Definitely.
I mean, I was going to say don't do it, but you already got hired.
Love that.
No, I mean,
Hopefully,
get you away from being afraid, because it is something new. Coming from personal experience, I was pushed into working with kids as well, with having no prior like experience, and it was kind of scary, but I hope that what I've learned I can share on with you, and also implementing what we learned in this class, that you'll be successful in your job, so you won't be too afraid anymore of trying something new.
No, yeah, I think just trying to like learn how to create a structure in like that kind of environment, because I know that they need like stability. It can't be unorganized.
So I think something that is very important for you to, take note about is that there are individual differences with each child that you work with. Understanding those differences is something that will definitely take you, one step closer to, being like you said, a possible classroom teacher. Knowing the differences is knowing each child as an individual, knowing their uniqueness, and using that knowledge to plan and adapt the curriculum, and help, most importantly, the children meet their academic or emotional or social goals. You have to take into accountability gender, right? Gender is a big one, because right now, even as, how as amazing as it can sound, kids are already like in elementary knowing their pronouns. I know it's something like so crazy to hear, because it's something new to me, right? I'm more like, oh, like, people are using pronouns, and what's the importance of pronouns and everything. And there's children that I work with who use their own pronouns, and there's actually a student in my class who wants me to refer to them as they, them, right? And it's this little boy, so it's like, but I can't, I want to respect his boundaries of that, and I call them they, them, right? So they are aware of all this. They know pronouns, and that's something shocking to me, because I had no idea, right? They're all into what is new, and I feel like that's something that we need to learn to respect, and learn to adapt to. There's also social behavior, right? With gender, there's girls who they're more into imaginary play and nurturing roles, and then there's boys who are in much larger groups, and they're more of rough playing, right? We have to take all these individual differences into account. We need to know about them. There's also a lot of teaching strategies, because each child is different. So many of our kids learn differently. I don't know if you're aware of the visual learning, auditory learning, and kinesthetic, and all those things. We need to know. I feel like as a teacher, you need to provide all those things in one lesson. You need to have like visuals, you need to have like hearing, and things hands-on, just so that these kids can be comfortable with learning, and you're not like just signaling it out one type of learning. Because I know when I was in school, teachers were like, you're gonna hear it and you have to learn it. And it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't learn that way. Like, obviously I didn't know that, but now knowing myself, I knew that I had such a hard time because I didn't learn that way. And me, it's like auditory or seeing. I have dyslexia, so seeing and hearing and reading out loud, it was so hard for me, but the teachers wanted that of me. And I know that now, if I have a student in that position, I wouldn't treat them that way. I would try to do every single strategy of learning so that they don't feel the way I felt when I was growing up. And then, one very, very important thing is that we need to take into accountability special needs, right? There's students who have disabilities, and some have special needs, right? And these special needs, some have what are they called? It's exceptional children. Those children have ADHD, they have autism, Down syndrome, and a lot of these kids are integrated in our classrooms nowadays. And we need to take, we need to take that into consideration of how are you going to teach those kids, right? It's individual differences, and we need to be able to be trained how to take, part in those teachings, because even today, many teachers that I work with don't know how to teach these children. And this is where I come in, right? I'm an adult assistant, and I help those teachers guide them how to, work with these kids, because they are, individuals that need more attention or less attention, or, they learn in many different ways, like I've said before. So that's pretty much my intake, my personal experience. I hope that helps.
I'm like, give me an appointment at your job. You can help me out.
I would love
basically what you
to.
do. Yeah. I was gonna say that, like, just like about what you said about social behaviors, especially between like boys and girls, we do, like, at the school, I was there for one day. So I do see that there is a gender imbalance amongst the students. Like, there's like a minority of girls and then the rest are boys. And they do seem to have like larger groups, and like the girls will go to like the tables and play Denny's, and the boys will be like digging giant holes in the sand. So I get what you mean about being observant of like these different social behaviors, and then kind of make an individualized instruction of kind of blending them more together so they're not as separated. So for like the girls being the minority, and like kind of making like a lesson so they could all kind of blend together.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to, I feel like a lot of schools, or like a lot of families, obviously we don't want to go against the families, right? But I feel like we should still teach our students that, not to follow this machista type of environment, because I see that sometimes, and I'm like, no, like, be a gentleman, respect girls and boys, because sometimes there's girls who don't respect boys either. They're like, oh yeah, and it's like, no, we got to be equal. We have to teach that to our children, to our students. And I know it's not the same at home, it may not be reciprocated, but that's our job in our schools. Like, we need to teach them, because you know what, they're with us majority of the day. Basically, we're their parents. Like, they're with us for like 6 hours, well, now because of COVID, it's like 3 hours, but we see them most of the day. And it's like, I feel like we are where it starts, and we have to plant that seed. And I mean, it sucks sometimes parents don't follow through, but we have to be that foundation for them. And definitely we need to teach them, I believe we need to teach them not the right way, but like the good way. And then at home they can do whatever they follow whatever they do, but I feel like it's our job, since we're the foundation. So
I agree 100%, because in the school setting is where they're learning the most. It's where they're learning how to properly socialize with others, and these things will go a long way. I agree 100%, Maria.
I was just wanted to make a comment about how you were talking about they already know their pronouns and stuff, and it's very interesting to know that, because a lot of people think that it's misunderstood or nobody's willing to learn. But if you have young children that already know what they prefer pronoun wise, adults need to get it together too.
Yes, I totally agree on that. If children can do it, why can't adults? What's so hard about that, But again, it goes back to,
at
trying
least
to
make
change
an
that
effort.
mentality, it's like they were raised differently. And again, like I also agree that it's very shocking not shocking, but it's like so interesting to see that the kids already know their pronouns. When I was young, when I was at their age, I would have never thought of that,
No
it
way.
would have never crossed my mind.
yeah,
It's just, I think it's a beautiful thing, to be honest. These kids, they're going to change the world. Hopefully, I pray.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Change it for the better.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing. It was very insightful. And I'm going to be talking about cultural needs. It kind of goes hand in hand. Well, it's very similar to individualism, like my friend Maria mentioned. But what I wanted to talk more about was the cultural needs of the classroom, and how can we be inclusive to children and not make them feel any less than their peers. And as teachers, we need to make sure that we understand the cultural aspect in the classroom setting, because if not, we will encounter three major problems. And one of them is teachers can misunderstand children. And when we fail to understand the influences of children's backgrounds on their development, it can lead to misunderstanding and miscommunication about children and their families. Another problem would be teachers can inaccurately assess a child's competence. And with this, too many English language learners are judged by their language delay, to be language delayed versus when they are demonstrating typical second language development. Children's competence should not be based on measures in a language in which they are fluent in. And a child who speaks a variation of English may have a well-developed vocabulary and may understand many concepts, but may not be well understood in school. And without accurate assessments, teachers' expectations for children's learning can be too low. Another major problem, which would be my third problem, would be teachers can plan incorrectly to promote children's learning. Misunderstandings of children's competence can lead to ineffective teaching that does not meet the needs of all students. And teachers can negatively judge children on the basis of their culturally influenced behaviors. One mistake that most educators and the general public make is that they equate cultural differences with disabilities. What does that mean? They a lot of times within our culture, we do things differently. And I believe an example that I read in the Pearson book was we have circle time, and one of the students is, very moving around, doesn't sit still, and he is from an Asian culture or background, I believe. And instead of the teacher trying to understand the child, puts him in timeout, and the child feels guilty because he has been isolated from the group. And in their culture, when you separate them from others, it's kind of like a dishonor thing. And I think because of that, we hurt the child versus helping them. And so that's another example of how we should educate ourselves about cultural differences. Another point, all children in our society need to acquire English, but they can become proficient without giving up their home language. I think this is very important because, even in our times now, we have been targeted about, we need to go back where we come from because we're not understanding or speaking the English language, without really understanding why it is we're not conforming to their standards. This is something that we are experiencing on an everyday basis. And I think that it just needs to be addressed. We don't want to lose our language. And when I say our language, I'm speaking because I'm also Latina, I am Mexican, Salvadorian, and I love my language, but it was really hard to learn without being said, hey, your child is dumb, we need to put him in special classes. So definitely pointers to take away is become culturally aware.
I totally agree with you, Cynthia. As someone that's learned in Spanish that was my first language. I always felt like that pressure from school to learn English. But what was funny was that I learned English so fast, and it wasn't something that I had to actually go into an English learning class. It was just based off of my interaction with the teachers that I was able to pick it up. And I think that sometimes that educators don't give that benefit of that, children are so resilient and they'll pick up the languages because they're sponges, like they're learning everything so fast.
Absolutely.
You were one of the lucky ones.
Thank you. Well, my mom, she was a teacher and she taught me how to read and write Spanish first.
Wow.
Lucky.
I know.
That's really
I can say like my experience as like how I mentioned before, having dyslexia, I was put in an English learner class, and it wasn't even that I wasn't able to learn the language. It was just that I had a hard time, developing it, or it was confusing for me.
Right.
And
You process
just
it
because
different.
Yeah, just because I was Hispanic, they're like, oh, she doesn't know, like put her in ELD, you know, and I was in it for like 2 years, which was something that affected me, you know. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like how you said, they put us in special classes, like they literally did. I would have to step out of my class to go to like tutoring type thing. And it was not even like, they were like, oh, you're not reading fast enough, or you're not doing this enough. And it was because I had dyslexia, but they never, you know, did those exams on me because I was Hispanic. They're like, oh, it's normal because she's Hispanic. It wasn't that. Yeah, so it does affect, and
it affects your self-esteem for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, and that's pretty big in the young adolescents. The little ones, they are big on their self-esteem.
And it's almost kind of seen as, you know, you're talking about cultural, well, I guess I'll be talking about cultural competence, but it kind of seems like that our culture is not seen as a value. It's more seen as like a defect. So I think that's important as well to, you know, acknowledge the child and all the value that they bring to the table.
Definitely.
Acknowledging the whole child.
I love the way you said that.
Yeah, that was good.
Yes.
No, yeah. I've never really looked at it like that, but it seems like when it's this, like it gives it like a really, like you're a defect. But I think this is really interesting too, because at the school that I work at, it is behind a Korean church. So all the kids are Korean or they are white. And which is unfortunate. There isn't any Hispanic children. But I feel like because there isn't, these kids aren't really going to be socialized to know anyone or like be comfortable interacting with them, especially they're at like this age and there's really no one they really interact with because of coronavirus. So it's like school and home. And just to see like the school only be Asian and white is like you see the lack of diversity.
Yeah, I feel like diversity is something like super huge that should, like, every school should have, you know,
definitely,
different races,
especially here in the States, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like the melting pot, the country that we're living in, and we're still living like oppressed in a sense because we're not given the same opportunities as those people of non-color, you know?
Well, this brings me to my point about how important it is to create environments that are respectful to children and as adults. As someone that comes from an environment where I don't know a lot about early childhood development, and this is my first time really learning and delving deep into it at a college level, I felt like I can kind of bring in a different perspective. And I really appreciated how the book emphasizes how children should be in a caring community of learners, and just how important that really is to acknowledge, because when you're small, you really pick up on everyone's cues, and you know when like a teacher doesn't like you, and you really feel it. And so in one of our modules, we read about a child with special needs, and also a teacher that wasn't able to really respond to that child effectively, and how that really impacted her life. And had she not been moved to a different school where she was being able to be taken care of with her different exceptionalities, I feel like her life would just been like a different outcome, and she wouldn't have really been able to learn like at the level she could have been. So I think that's so important, to be caring and have positive relationships. And that can be anything with like, just like the basic, just like treating people with respect. I know that seems very like common knowledge, but at times, sometimes we have different biases within ourselves that can really come out and as not in a way that you want it to come out, but that's just what your bias is towards other people. And so I think it's important to acknowledge what those biases that we have within us for other cultures, are, so that way when we're dealing with different students of different backgrounds, we're able to kind of like take a step back and think like, am I judging them for being a special needs child, and how you should respond, and you should really take care of that within yourself and not really take it out on the child. Another thing that really I wanted to highlight was cultural competence. I think that the ability of teachers working with children of different backgrounds and cultures is so important, because at least for myself, I can kind of give an example of one of my teachers in elementary school, Miss Shin. She was a Asian background, and everybody in my class was of Latino background. And so one of the things that she did to kind of like show cultural competence with us was that she created this kind of activity within our class about how like numbers and then tamales, and like she brought supplies to make tamales and at our
That's so sweet.
Yes, tamales as our class assignment. And like, I don't know, I kind of felt like, she went the extra mile to try to relate to us culturally, and I feel like that's so important as well. And I still remember, and this was like, 15 years, 20 years ago. And as well, this could, you have to show competence towards cultural differences, and that could be anything from like languages, socioeconomic classes, different races, ethnicities, like different religions, and anything, all the different aspects of that diversity has. And then my last tip for you is just like knowing what your ethical responsibilities are as a teacher, and just, always show up just, to, I was going to say school, but your classes, and just always be honest, have integrity and respect. And I think that ultimately with those things, you're going to be a great teacher. I'm rooting for you.
Ooh, thank you.
We're all rooting for you.
Yes, we are. Those are great tips. Great tips.
I think jumping off from what Jennifer pointed out, having these biases, it's so hard. I'm taking my, I think my race ethnicity class, and we do talk about that. And it's such a heavy class, but I appreciate it so much because before that class, I took a women's studies class, and I felt so naive because I did not know what, or the women went through to get the right to vote. You know what I mean? Like, it was just very eye-opening. And I kept telling myself, like, I kept saying, like, I felt so stupid. And my professor's like, no, you're like, history doesn't really talk about what we went through. And now that you know about it, just kind of be aware about it, And I'm like, I know, but it's still very saddening. But so I'm sure you guys have taken this. It's this Harvard implicit bias test. I'm sure some of you guys have taken.
That's the word I was looking for. Implicit bias.
So I took it, and I took one on disability and able people, and apparently I do have a bias, not against, but I guess with this and people with special needs.
Oh, like an
but I feel again
bias,
because I don't understand them. I have never really interacted with anybody who has a special need. Like, so I feel like I haven't been prepared. Like, I personally feel like I'm not negatively biased against them. It's just like I don't know how to interact with them.
Yeah, and that creates like microaggressions, because it's like you don't know how to act.
Right.
No, I've been in that position as well. Like, I totally freak out when one of my students is nonverbal. Like, I don't know how to teach them or what to do when they're asking for something or when they need something. And I totally freak out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I try to like avoid being with the student who's nonverbal, like because it gives me anxiety. I know they feed off of it. And it's kind of like, nobody teaches me, nobody teaches us or trains us to like, work with them. So it's kind of like, it gives me anxiety, and I don't want that to bounce off. And like, I totally agree. Like sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, like, I work better with certain type of kids with disabilities. And I feel like, I don't know if it's biased, but I feel like, putting me where I'm more like where I can excel. Like I feel like it's so much better. Like I'm so good with children that have specific special needs, and I excel there. But like when you put me, you know, like I just said with a nonverbal student, I feel like I fail. But obviously it's a learning experience. Like, you know, Jessica is gonna you know, she's gonna go through all these things and she's gonna learn and she's gonna see all these, you know, you're gonna have tough times and good times and sad times, and you know, but it all comes together and it's all learning experiences. And yeah, like that's just, you know, I it's totally normal. I still freak out, and I've been doing this for like 6 years, so it's totally like normal. I don't know if it's biased, you know, you guys can tell me if it is, but that's just my
you're aware of it. And that's one thing that I told my professor too. I was like, how do we, you know, overcome this? And she's like, it's hard to completely get rid of your bias. It is a progress, it's working progress through your whole life. But being aware of it and kind of reeling yourself in into like, okay, you know what I mean? Just pretty much, it's just most importantly being aware of it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and you trying to work hard on it. But yeah, she said it's hard. I'm just like, oh.
I think one of the things that you guys can probably do, which I feel like, I don't know, I kind of make this as a common sense kind of situation, but just being more exposed to different people, I think will really help. Because if it's the first time you've ever seen someone, or if it's like, you know, the 5th time, that's still just only, you know, a small amount of and the fact that you're being open about it, I think that speaks like volumes.
Like,
because
for sure, it's a step for sure.
Like I still feel like sometimes like I'm a weirdo sometimes, because I don't know if it offends, you know, people with special needs, but when I see someone in the streets, I'm like, I go straight to them. I'm like, oh, how are you? Like, how are you feeling? You know, like I just interact with them. And I don't know if that's something like offensive. I've never like thought about it in that sense. Like one time I saw like, you know, a really short lady, and I kind of was like trying to speak to her, and I like bent down, right, to talk to her. And I felt like that was so offensive. And I caught myself and I was like, get up, get up. And I stood up and I was talking to her normal, you know, but I just felt like the need to like come down to her and speak to her. But you know, like I just remember like, dang, that's offensive. Like, you know, stand up straight, don't do that. So it's like,
and I think you can ask the people what they're comfortable with. You know, I think if we take that moment to ask,
for sure,
how do they feel more comfortable and how can we make them more comfortable, I think that would be like super helpful. Because sometimes, I mean, I suffer a lot from assumptions in general.
I think we all do.
Speaking to the choir, girl.
But it's just, you know, it's just taking the extra like time to just ask them, and really just being open and also being accepting. That's really big.
Yep. Always educate.
Yes.
Okay, so now for me, my next advice for you would be, you know, creating environments that are nurturing. And I feel like everybody before me has already gave you great advice, and I'm pretty much just piggybacking off them. Like,
they all overlap. It's fine.
Like Maria Castillo did individualized instruction. Another great point that goes along with that is like developmentally appropriate practices, or DAP, which is teaching, which is attuned to children's ages, experiences, and abilities and interests, and helps them attain challenging and achievable goals. This is something important. I think this is more important for like early childhood educators. I think you're in preschool?
Yes, so it's preschool.
Right? You're in preschool.
But it's
which
like
I guess
the older.
Yeah, which is the older ones, right? But
the 5 to 6.
I feel like as when they go into preschool, to pre-K, it changes dramatically from when they were like in daycare or something. Children who've been in daycare, they, you know, I feel like it's so different. But I feel like in pre-K, you still kind of try to follow some sense of like DAP, developing appropriate practices, because sometimes I feel like preschools have already like a not a syllabus, but a curriculum. I have a friend who's a teacher. He's like, I'm like, do you have to come up with it yourself or something? He's like, no, they give it to us and this is pretty much what we have to teach. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, I thought you had to come up with it yourself. He's like, no, they just give it to us. I'm like, huh, interesting. I was very thrown off by that because as an early childhood, future early childhood educator, I do want to work in the daycare center. We have to come up with the curriculum ourselves. You know, we do get bullet points kind of like what needs to be taught, like the seasons. It depending on the school, some of them don't really celebrate like, I guess, important holidays. I guess it depends on the school too, you know. But
Yeah.
developmentally proper practice, I feel like it's, again, piggyback off individualized instruction is a great, it's another good thing. And focusing even more on individualized instruction would be differentiated instruction, which refers to creating multiple paths so that children of different abilities, interests, and learning needs experience equally appropriate ways to achieve important learning goals. So this doesn't mean, you know, equality appropriate does not mean the same thing, or differentiated appropriate does not mean different assignments. So if a child is falling behind is in class, it's just trying to support them, giving them that extra help so they can reach the same kind of level that the other children are doing. What else? I feel like
yeah, that's kind of how like Maria had talked about, right? That if like someone learns better visually,
yes,
then you wouldn't want to teach them like by audio, you know, speaking
by
to them
audio,
only.
right? Yeah, exactly. It's just like building specifically for them.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
I feel like that's also like a building a nurturing environment because they feel comfortable if you're, you know, understanding them and like doing things that they are able to do, because then they feel like they're accomplished. They're not like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this, or they don't feel down about themselves if you have that environment where they're able to learn. So I feel like that goes a lot with nurturing environment because you're building that. And obviously you have to, you feel the class, you know, and kind of like, you know, see what children do this and what children do that. Cause, you know, in classes, they also have small groups. And in my school, it kind of, I don't agree with this, but in my school, they separate the kids into groups, but like in their level of learning. I mean, it's good, you know, their level of learning, like it's kind of good because they get that individual instruction and it helps them out a lot. But then they know that and they're like, oh, I'm in this group because I learned.
It like creates labels on them.
So it's good in a way for academics, you know, academically it's good because they're getting the best that they can, but then socially and emotionally it's kind of like, you know, it gets to them because they do know they're smart, they know they're in the group with the kids.
They think kind of like I'm better in a sense, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens in my school.
I wish I was in their group.
Exactly. And there's some kids that have came up to me and told me, what do I have to do to go into that group? Which me knowing that they won't be able to be in that group because, you know, their learning is, you know, lower, you know, but it sucks. So I don't know, like I kind of agree in a sense because academically and obviously schools need to you know, like achieve academically, so this is why they do stuff like that, but then, you know, they don't think about emotional and socially how they're affecting the kids. So
I mean, another great point for nurturing is, you know, building effective partnerships with families, especially when it comes to cultural backgrounds, personal experiences as members of families, both as children and as parents, outside influences such as information gained from the media, and education and training. You know, I think that 3 steps that needs to be taken when talking about that, because I feel like those points can cause some tensions. And again, culturally, we're all different, but we need to include those cultural differences in the program. You know, clarifying preferences, communicating preferences, and obviously negotiating successfully. Collaborating and sharing power with families requires negotiating skills, trying to understand one another, not trying to belittle one or fight with the other one. It's just, I guess, a mutual understanding between the parents and the teachers. And I think the most important one is, the most fundamental way to promote healthy development and learning in young children is for teachers to build and sustain positive relationships with children. Like, again, with the whole Maya situation, the
case
assignment that we did,
right?
That was so like heartbreaking, even for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have yet to encounter that in my, in hopefully my future career, but I know that you guys have pointed it out that it's actually pretty common. And I'm just like, I can't, like, it just breaks my heart to see that there are teachers who act like this. Like, then why go into this profession if you're not if you're not going to support the children and have positive relationships with them, like, did you forget along the way? Or
I feel like sometimes it has to do with also where they work, because sometimes they're not trained for that and for situations like that. So, and if you want to see it in another view, I feel like Catherine wasn't probably taught how to work with certain individuals that would come into her classroom. So it might have been her fault with her attitude and her personality, or it also might have been, she wasn't trained for that, because that does tend to happen.
So Jessica, I actually have a few pointers as far as how you can handle children who have linguistic or specific linguistic needs. Like Maria Vasquez said, I'm gonna also piggyback off of, what everybody else has already touched base on. Especially Cynthia, culture and language obviously go hand in hand. And I know Cynthia also, I'm sure everybody else, touched base on the importance of inclusion. And I know Cynthia, I wrote down I made note of what she said, how too many English language learners are judged to be language delayed when they are demonstrating typical second language development. As a deaf studies major, I have learned the importance of establishing a child's native language as their first language. They can learn so much better after that first language is established, and learn English in this case a lot faster, instead of trying to push English first when they were already trying to establish their first native language. It's like very confusing for the child. And we all know how crucial the first 5 years of life are as far as development goes. The first language being part of their culture is also a part of their identity formation. So in a classroom setting, the little things go a long way. It's important to provide, as educators, a safe setting where all different cultures, all different languages are accepted. And it's okay to show the child that it's not something to be ashamed of, to have a second language. And by doing so, they get a sense of like being proud to have the second language, and it's not something to look down upon. I saw in like our Pearson, our readings, there's this video of like two early educators, childhood educators, and their classrooms, and I'm sure we've all seen it. They have like signs everywhere, and it has like hola means hello in Spanish, or like konnichiwa means hello in Japanese. And it's just like children will see this and be like, oh my gosh, like that's me, like I know what this means. And same thing with all these other various language that we encounter. When it comes to helping a child one-on-one, breaking down tasks is key. It's important to help them understand what you expect of them. By scaffolding, demonstrating what you want them to do, instead of doing, assigning them like 5 different tasks to do at once. Just assign them that first one, show them how to do it. And you're not providing too much pressure, as they're trying to adjust to this new language, adjust to this new culture. It's just little things to keep in mind while you're working with children with different language backgrounds and who are learning English as a second language.
No, yeah, I like this one thing that the teacher did was it was instead of nap time, they did like a relaxed playtime. So they played in the grass with like the toys they brought from home. But while they
cute.
were doing that, there was 2 new students. So she kind of like wanted to know like where they were at with like speaking, reading, and like writing, or even just like identifying numbers. And one of the kids was like really advanced, and then like the other one, he kind of had a hard time, but like even though he did, she would still try to like praise him about it, so he wouldn't want to like stop doing it, which I think was important.
Yeah, or
definitely. And then just allowing them to have that native language still being used at home, and then like learning English, and teachers being supportive, you know, at whatever level they're at, they're going to learn it eventually, you know. It's their mind, like I think Jennifer said, or it's like a sponge, they're absorbing every little thing, you know. So it's all about having that patience for them and accommodating them as much as they need.
Do you have any other questions for us, Jessica, or do you need any more pointers?
I think that seems like a good overview of a lot of things about being a good educator.
Well, I'm glad we were able to help you.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I'm sure you'll do great at this new job. And like Maria C said, you are going to just experience everything, and hopefully for the better, and not so much, you know, have those downtimes.
Just ask questions, like always ask questions if you're not sure, or if you don't know, or you did something that you feel like you don't know if you did it correctly. Just always ask questions to whoever is your upline, or you know, coworkers that have been there before, and see what their experience has been, or what they did, or what you could have done differently. I feel like always having feedback and getting like constructive criticism will help you in the long run. And I would just say, like, you know, just let it go, learn to let go of every bad day, every, you know, bad situation, because that does carry on with you. And like from personal experience, don't take it home. Like it's just work. These kids just need all your help, and yeah, they need you 100%. So just think about that. You know, in the long run, they're gonna need you so much. So just grow and learn from it.
Yeah, and I just think about how, like, you know, Dr. Joni's class has been such a good foundational class, and just will help you overall in your job.
Yes, definitely.
Ooh, thank you. Okay, everyone. I would just like to thank you all for giving me many tips that I would like to put into practice when I work with my kids tomorrow.
You're very welcome, Jessica. It's been a pleasure working with all you ladies.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure too.
Thank you. It was appreciated.
We got you, girl.
Yes, definitely. And Dr. J, if you're still listening, thank you for tuning in. Catch us on our next podcast next week. What was the topic again?
Social injustice.
Social injustice.
Yes. Thanks again, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye.
bye.
Bye.